Hello, my name is Ashley Crook, and this is my performance-based project for Models of Teaching. I chose Madeline Hunter's instructional theory into practice, which includes the following components: learning objectives, anticipatory set, state the lesson objectives to the students, input, check for understanding, guided practice, and independent practice. The learning strategies I incorporated over the two lessons include setting objectives and providing feedback, reinforcing effort and providing recognition, cues and questions, assigning homework and providing practice, and cooperative learning. This lesson is designed for 7th grade math in a virtual classroom setting. These lessons would be appropriate for a whole large group class, but I modified and adapted it to fit a small group for the students that I was working with. On day one, the objective is the students will be able to find the percent of a number. During the anticipatory set, I will present a question related to a real-life scenario involving raising money for a class trip to Washington, D.C. I will say that we have raised 75% of the $12,000 needed for the trip and ask the students how much money we have raised so far. Then I will state the lesson objective to the students. This is using the strategy of setting objectives. Next is the input part of the lesson, in which I will show an example and show the steps of how to find the percentage of the $12,000. This is where I would identify and teach the main concepts and skills of finding a percent. I would use this example and model what I was thinking as I went through the steps. I could also show more examples and explain the steps as they are completed. The next part of the input would be an interactive video that would further explain how to find the percent of a number. After the video was over, I would ask students questions about the concepts that were in the video. This was the strategy of questioning. Next, as I would check for understanding, I would have students complete problems on the whiteboard and have them use signaled responses, the polling options A, B, C, and D to designate what they think is the correct answer. This way, I can provide immediate feedback to the group as a whole and reteach certain steps if necessary. If students are getting the correct answers, I know that I am ready to move on to guided practice. During the guided practice, this is where it would come after the instructions, and I would have students work on a problem on their own in their own room. I would move from room to room, cueing them with steps and hints needed, and providing corrections also as needed. I would have the students then explain their process for solving the problem to the group afterwards. The strategies used here were cueing and reinforcing effort and providing recognition. I would do this in the groups and make sure that I was telling the students what a good job they were doing and when they were solving the steps correctly as well as incorrectly. The next part of the lesson would be the independent practice. Here I would give homework that would consist of a few problems that follow the same structure as the ones completed in class. I would tell students that they are being asked to solve the problems on their own to show that they correctly know how to find the percent of the number. I will tell them that we will use this skill tomorrow in helping us find sales tax and tips. On day 2, the objective is the students will find and estimate solutions to application problems involving percents. The anticipatory set of this lesson, again, is to present a question that is related to a real-life scenario. I would also go over the homework from the day before. Going over the homework from the day before would allow students to make corrections to their work as needed. I would provide feedback to the questions that may be presented. This will lead into stating the objective to the students. The input part of the lesson on day 2 would be to identify and teach the main concepts and skills, to provide clear expectations, and to use examples. Again, I would show examples and put them up on the whiteboard and explain the steps clearly as I went through them. These first examples are involving how to find the sales tax for different states and comparing the difference. Next, I would show an interactive video that reinforced the concepts of finding sales tax. After the video, I would ask students questions about it so that the concepts and skills were reinforced. This video would give students another mode of presentation. The next part of the input is to teach the concept of finding tips through a word problem. Again, I would explain each step as it would appear on the whiteboard in the example. I would then show another interactive video where it would reinforce the same concepts, and it would also show some information about estimating percents. Again, I would provide cueing and use questioning after the video to make sure that the students understand the concepts. During the check for understanding in day 2, I would again complete additional problems on the whiteboard and have students use signaled responses, the polling options A, B, C, and D, to show me that they understood and picked the correct answer. This way, I can provide immediate feedback to the group again and reteach certain steps if necessary. Next, I would move on to the guided practice. I will monitor the students closely so that they are successful. I will also practice with them in their groups and clarify errors as necessary so that they can be fixed immediately. This is also when the students would be put into breakout groups to solve the problems following the structure of the ones modeled in the examples and in the check for understanding. Each group will be given a menu from different restaurants. One student will be asked to pick items from the menu and create a bill. One will be in charge of finding the total, and one will write the problem to calculate the tip for 20%. Then each student will calculate the amount for the tip and compare answers to make sure that they got the same answer. I will then check for understanding again to see if they need any errors clarified. I will share feedback with them about what steps they were doing correctly as well as incorrectly and reinforce their effort. Then we can move on to the independent practice once I know the students have practiced both skills with minimal errors. I will assign homework so that they can independently practice the skills. The students will work on a few sample problems on both sales tax and tip. They will also be asked to ask somebody at home for a receipt from something they bought at a store. The students would take the total before the tax and multiply by 6% sales tax and see if they get the same total that is on the receipt. Since I do not currently teach an entire classroom, I use these lessons to teach the concepts to 7th grade students whom I tutor. I taught to 3 students over 2 days. The parts described in the lesson where I would typically do several breakout groups, I was only able to have one group. I felt that the students did a good job grasping the concepts and applying the skills that were incorporated in the lessons. All students were actively engaged, and I feel like working with such a small group was a benefit for them. These students are ones who typically need a lot of structure, multiple modes of presentation, structured practice, positive reinforcement, and feedback. The framework and strategies that I incorporated into the lessons helped the students meet the objectives. The students needed more guided practice during the first day because this was actually on setting up changing percentages to decimals and making sure the computation was correct. Once the skill was mastered, they did a nice job applying the skill to find the sales tax and tips. The feedback given on the first day was most beneficial so that the students were able to apply those skills to real-life problems on the second day. On both days, I provided similar strategies, but on day 2 also included cooperative learning. During the anticipatory set on day 2, I provided feedback to students on the homework from the day before. I wanted to do this to make sure the purpose was reinforced for doing the homework and to have students see if they accomplished the tasks independently. On both days, the anticipatory set led to setting the objective. The lesson objective was shown to the students, but I explained it to them in relation to what they would be working on in the lesson. This gave the students a direction for learning. Throughout the guided practice, when students were solving the problems on their own, I reinforced effort and provided recognition to the students. I praised the students when they completed a step correctly so that they knew that they were working towards meeting the objective. This helped to show the students that there is a relationship between the effort that they make and their achievement. I also provided feedback to the students in showing them what they did correctly and what they needed to improve. I used questioning throughout the lesson as I was showing examples and as the students were solving the problems on their own. I would give wait time, and then if students were confused on a step, I would give cues to help them remember the step. I also asked questions after each video to reinforce the information that was given. During the breakout group on day 2, the students demonstrated cooperative learning. They each had a specific role in completing the problem. This allowed the students to have the opportunity to work and interact with one another to achieve the goal. At the end of the lesson, I assigned homework and it provided an opportunity for practice. This was done only if the students demonstrated an understanding of the skills learned and practiced throughout the input, guided practice, and check for understanding. The homework's purpose was explained to the students, and they were able to apply the knowledge and skills of finding the percent, sales tax, and tip independently. On day 2, it also allowed them to use this skill in a real-life situation so that they could see the importance of learning and applying the knowledge and skills. I hope you enjoyed my lesson, and thank you for watching.